President Hartwell is out ill, as is our clerk, Leah. So I will entertain a motion from council to nominate Mr. Hatfield as the clerk for this evening.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Freitas. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. The chair will dispense with all opening formalities. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ron Ackerman. Present. Lisa Sardi.
Present.
Dave Vila. Present. Jerry Tiroli. Present. Nicole Freitas.
Present.
Margaret Phillips.
Present.
I'm here too.
Mike Snyder.
Present. That's okay. It's okay, you do. I will entertain a motion to waive all irregularities in the calling and conduct of this meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Trolley. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Sardi. All in favor?
Aye.
It has been certified that all rules for notification of this meeting have been complied with. At this time, the purpose of this meeting is for a special presentation of Washington Properties and Mr. Rose. At the conclusion of the meeting, as this is an information gathering meeting, council will be able to ask questions. I know President Hartwell has a few questions that she's presented to Mr. Hatfield, and then we will adjourn for the evening. There will be no public comment. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mayor Leone.
Thank you for the time. Just a quick announcement. As you've seen, we've been through a process where we've had public meetings, and I'm sure everyone's been paying attention. This is a hot topic for the city of Port Clinton. But you've noticed how we went from a conceptual drawing that was completely filled with buildings. But because of those public meetings and all the input from the community, the city leaders, that has changed dramatically, and that's what the presentation is going to show. There's also in this meeting is to bring forward a plan outlining exactly what that plan is per Mike Rose's vision and Washington Properties. And we also have Craig Trick here with us to help that along. And I guess I'll just turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of Mr. Mike Rose and Washington Properties, we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come back and present some additional information for you since the last meeting. I understand, I know we have some new council members on board. Welcome to all of you. And I think there's no question it's a very exciting time to be a resident in Port Clinton with what's going on. And I think even a greater importance for you leaders as far as the future of the city and so on. But I think before we go any further, just to take you back a little bit, some of you may have heard how we even got to this place, but for those of you who haven't, I guess I'd like to bring you up to speed here. Again, I'm Craig Trick. Been coming to Port Clinton for over 40 years. Been a full-time resident for 20 years. Got 4 children. My 2 oldest children have already gone through the public schools. Pat Atkins is here, and we got great schools, and we're very appreciative of that. I have 2 children still in the schools. I have a daughter in the 7th grade, and my son is a freshman at the high school, so I've got 2 more still in the public schools here. But over the 40 years that I've been coming here, in the last 20 years that I've lived here full-time, I mean, I've seen a lot of changes in Port Clinton. Some good. Our schools are great, the changes that have occurred there. Some not so good. And I think the most disheartening one that I've seen is the consistent, I guess, decline of our downtown since I've been here. And then also, I think, our underutilized waterfront. Through my job, I get an opportunity to travel to a lot of smaller towns and bigger cities in northern Ohio, north central Ohio. And several years ago, I was down in Medina, and I don't know if many of you have been through Medina or not, but Medina always kind of appealed to me because they're downtown, all their old buildings in the 1800s have been restored, all the storefronts are filled, a lot of unique restaurants and shops and things like that. So it's always caught my attention when I passed through Medina. Well, I was down there for a luncheon with a business associate the one day, and after the luncheon was over, we came out onto the public sidewalks there, and I just asked him, I said, your downtown's beautiful. I said, I've always admired it. I said, how do you guys do this? How do you maintain it, and so on? He said, have you ever heard of Mike Rose? And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, Washington Properties? I said, no, never heard of them either. He said, well, they were the catalyst who really got our downtown turned around, and what you're seeing as a result of what they were able to do. And I thought, interesting. He said, well, he said he also went down to Worcester and Orville, and he's had similar successes in those communities. So kind of heard it, listened to it, and 6 months later, I'm down in Worcester for a luncheon for work, and noticed a lot of the same similarities in Worcester that I saw in Medina. A lot of the older buildings had been restored, they've been brought back to their original glory. They've got new uses, there's people living in them upstairs. Very few vacancies downtown on their main street. And I asked that guy, I said, your downtown really looks good. I said, no, does it always look like this? He said, no. He said, our downtown was dying, actually. I said, what made the change? He said, have you ever heard of Mike Rose? Now, I wasn't the brightest kid in 6th grade, but I was the only one with a driver's license. so I did pick that up, and I said, I need to get to know this guy. So I made it a point to introduce myself to Mike, and for 2 years, I tried extending an invitation for him to come to Port Clinton. Growing up here, I have always seen so much potential for our town. Never happened. Could never figure out why. But obviously, seeing what Mike Rose and Washington Properties had done in Medina and Worcester, I don't know. I couldn't see any reason why he couldn't make that happen in our town. So for 2 years, I kept extending the invitation to him to come. Yeah, I'd like to come up sometime, but he was always busy. Well, needless to say, when he said I'd like to schedule a time to come up and look at Port Clinton, I was very excited. And didn't take him long. He came up with his architect, David Krebs, AODK Architects. They looked around town, and it didn't take them long to realize there was a lot of potential here. So basically, that's how we got to this point. With that, I guess I'd like to go ahead and roll into the presentation. Some of this, you'll have to excuse me, some of this was shared at the public forums, but I think it's important to recap the first part of this presentation, and then we're going to, midway through, get into more of the details and specifics of this project. So, thank you. So, basically, when Washington Properties decided Port Clinton was a community which they saw potential, they started asking people outside of the area. When you think of Port Clinton, what do you think of? These were the most common phrases that came up: vacation, tourism, city on the lake, access to the islands, fishing, festivals, all good things. I mean, I think every community would be pleased to have that be the first thoughts that pop into people's minds. Next slide. In reality, these people are coming with these visions of Port Clinton, and when they're getting here, unfortunately right now, this is today what they're seeing in our downtown. Several vacancies in our storefronts, many of our buildings that are in disarray, rarely used second, third floors, and underutilized waterfront. Waterworks Park, obviously a great asset to the community, very underutilized, and 500,000 people each year passing through here. Trying to figure out a way to capture it. Again, current condition, we don't need to spend a lot of time on these, and the pictures speak for themselves. Again, potential great, the utilization not perfect. Again, this is picture yourself being a tourist coming to the Waterworks Park area. You know, this photo wasn't created. That's there if you want to go out today and look at it. Not real enticing or inviting to come out and put a towel down and have a picnic. So next, please. So how do we change this? How do we, the perception these people have of Port Clinton is good, but how do we change the community to fit the perception these people have? But I think one of the objectives is obviously to capitalize on the rich heritage and natural resources Port Clinton has to offer, ultimately restoring pride in the community and creating a regional hub which will bring people to the area year-round. Now if you look, obviously the natural resources are self-explanatory. We've got Lake Erie, we're surrounded by water. We've got Lake Erie on one side, we've got Sandusky Bay on the other side, we've got the Portage River coming right through our town. So I mean, our natural resources, again, self-explanatory. People have always been drawn to water, that's why they keep coming here. The other thing we want to focus on, if you go back there, is one slide, go back one slide. Yep.
Don't know if I can. No, it's going to go forward.
Okay. What was the rich heritage? And down in the lower left-hand picture, there we go. Does anybody know what that photo is? Victory Hotel, correct. Built right here in Ottawa County. It was over on Put-in Bay. It was the largest resort hotel in America in its time. And another interesting fact, it was the first co-ed swimming pool ever. But tragically, in 1917, I believe it was, horrific fire went through there and burned it to the ground. There's still remnants of the foundation over there. that can still be found, but I want you to just take a look at that photo because we're going to relate to it a little bit later in the presentation. Now on the right, obviously another historical part of Port Clinton is the old lighthouse. I know there's a group in town here restoring that, and I think there's been an agreed upon spot on the Waterworks part to be a prominent spot to display that thing, which again will preserve a piece of Port Clinton's history and also give another attraction for people to come and visit. So how do we do this? How do we transform the image of Port Clinton? Basically, what Washington Properties has presented here is a redevelopment artery, is what we'd like to call it. And basically, I guess, a simple way to look at it, whenever you go to a shopping mall, basically at both ends of the mall, what do you have? Two big anchors, correct? And everything in between kind of fills in between those two anchors. The redevelopment of downtown would be no different. Obviously, one of the anchors is your existing downtown, beautiful stock of old buildings, old inventory of buildings, with a lot of character, a lot of detail, a lot of charm. Do they need work? Yes, but the bones are there to make things happen. Then the other anchor would be the underutilized waterfront and the Waterworks Park. Both areas are very underutilized today. So basically, once these two anchors are developed, you will see everything in between feed in. You'll see other redevelopment take place and also spur up from there. Looking at our downtown again today, people are coming to town. This is the Hearstberger building as you see it today. The bones are there, it's good, the structure's there. The next slide will show what the building could look like with just a little bit of help. Take the boards off the windows, put new windows in, a new canopy, and basically just restore it to the way that it was the day that it was built. Next building here, again, it's a cornerstone of your downtown. Corner of 2nd Street and Madison Street. Beautiful building, beautiful details. Again, years and years of neglect that unfortunately brought it to this point. This here, with a little bit of help, could be what this building would look like. And if you've been to Medina, you've been to Worcester, many of those buildings look like the before pictures, and now they look like the after pictures. And probably the most building with the most characteristic downtown is the Oddfellows building. And when you really examine that closely, I mean, you wouldn't want to try to duplicate that building today in new construction. Now, it's been modified over the years with the canopy out front and the brick facade that goes up the first floor. You know, to restore that, you pull all that stuff off and then basically bring the building back to its original facade. And there you go, that's what it would look like. So that's the way the downtown gets revitalized. One building at a time, transforming it, repurposing it, and so on, and it becomes contagious. So that's the focus of the downtown. Now we'd like to focus a little bit more on the underutilized waterfront. Basically, you're looking at 3 structures. The first one, let's see if this works. Yes, it does. Okay. This first facility right here is the Lodge and Conference Center. We'll show the rendering of it a little bit later, but it's right at a prominent point for people that are entering the harbor to Port Clinton. About 159 rooms in it, and we're going to get into more details a little bit further down the presentation. Here's building number 2, and here's building number 3. That building and that building are mixed-use buildings, all first-floor retail, shops, restaurants, and so on. And we've created a corridor. This here is a beautiful boardwalk area, which you can see in this rendering over here. But we'll have it on the slide presentation a little bit. But a very beautiful boardwalk area that links right down Jefferson Street here. We'll wrap around these buildings, down Perry, down to Madison. And this link goes all the way around the entire site. The important point, I guess, to stress here is the entire site here, 100% public access. There's nothing blocked from any resident to use. The park gets enhanced. There's new walking trails, jogging trails. We got a new community amphitheater down here. Got a new playground area for the kids over here. The restored lighthouse is shown up here. An enhanced derby pond. go ahead and get the pond cleaned back up and maintained. Right now, I know a lot of people enjoy going out to the Waterworks Park to just sit there and look at the lake. Still can have, this whole area right here would be for people that just want to grab their lunch and they want to go sit down there and look out over the lake to the islands and things like that. So that is still being accommodated through here, or if they want to bring their kids down to go fishing or go over to the playground. Again, all public access, 100% of the site. Touching on the lodge, the amenities, obviously banquet, conference room. We're looking at a conference room that'll probably house about 300 people, and that space could be subdivided into groups of 50 or so. So you could have multiple companies or organizations in there hosting meetings at multiple times. The rooms would range anywhere from studio to 3-bedroom units. You'd have an indoor-outdoor pool, spa, fitness center, restaurant, pub, and so on. Now, this lodge would not be built to compete against your existing hotels. This lodge it's an upscale lodge that would be catering to an entirely different market than the rest of the hotel. So not meant to compete against the existing hotels, made to complement them. Again, some of the events that could take place within the conference center, corporate retreats, government, environmental groups, weddings, trade shows, training center, and then obviously the conference center itself. Community events, your Main Street program and your chamber already do a great job of organizing many community events, and Washington Properties would work closely, obviously, with them to see how we could not only continue with those, but expand into even more venues to draw people to the area. Obviously, the natural fishing competitions would be promoted even heavier. Corporate expos for tackle, rods, and sponsoring your runners, but marathons. Any city or town that hosts a marathon, they draw thousands of people in, and the rooms are all filled, and they usually make weekends out of it. They'll hit the restaurants and the establishments and the shops and so on. So that'd be another nice venue to hit. Kite surfboarding exhibition competitions, live performances at the amphitheater, regional food spirits as a platform for regional wineries. Now we've got several wineries within a 1-hour radius here, so it'd be nice to bring them together, let them showcase their products. And again, the arts and crafts venue, I know that's already very active and vibrant here in the community. And then an expanded walleye festival, and obviously the bird watching. It seems like each year that becomes more and more popular. So just some ideas of things we could keep growing on. Now the key, obviously, spring to fall is pretty easy to program events around. Winter activities is where we want to continue to keep people coming to the community. So some examples here would be a community tree lighting ceremony, visits with Santa, obviously, a holiday lights festival, ice sculpting competition, which Washington Properties has been very vital in doing this in Medina, and they draw, I think, 10,000 people on a weekend here for that. And they get some of the best ice sculptures in the world that come to this event. Ice skating, obviously on Derby Pond. For couples, we could focus on spa packages, wine tastings, obviously your New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day. But ice fishing, obviously, as you all know, has been huge this year. They've been having great success out there. A winter beer festival, snowmobiling. So there's a lot of other venues we can tap into that we're currently not really promoting very much. So now, that was kind of a recap of our public presentation. Now we want to get into more details of this project. But why Washington Properties and why Port Clinton? It's pretty obvious. The revitalization of downtown Port Clinton and the development and enhancement of the waterfront. Now, I mentioned we were going to draw reference back to that Victory Hotel. David Krebs and his architectural staff, I think, have done an amazing job of capturing a piece of Ottawa County history and bringing it back and bringing it to life in the 21st century. You can see the similarities between this lodge and the Victory Hotel. The architectural detail is incredible. If you can envision being up a couple miles out on the lake, looking at the shoreline, seeing this majestic lodge on the horizon, I mean, what a way for people to be welcomed into your port. So I think they did a very, very nice job. The lower level, again, all public access. Up underneath there's a covered porch where people can sit in the Adirondack chairs and have an iced tea or a cold beverage and watch the boats go by. Up above, upscale restaurant with a view to die for, obviously, up above their indoor and outdoor dining. And then the boardwalk that basically flows all along your riverfront with docks and transient docks coming in, and then tying right down Jefferson Street over to Perry Street. This here's a rendering of what your boardwalk would look like. Where basically the existing parking lot is downtown right now. This would now be the new boardwalk. The whole first floor would be all public space, waterfront dining, unique shops, restaurants. It'd be an area where you can take your family down, your kids, your grandkids, your friends that are visiting, take them down for dinner, walk down, go through a couple shops, grab an ice cream cone. It's hard to see from this one, but there's benches down along there at various points. You can sit down on a bench, watch the boats go by. But again, a very inviting public space. And again, you can see the architectural detail element carries through from the lodge all the way through the whole boardwalk area as it transitions to our existing downtown. And if you notice, the scale is consistent with what you have downtown now. And in essence, what Washington Properties has designed and presented here is nothing more than an extension of Madison Street. When the buildings on Madison Street were constructed in all towns, actually back in the late 1800s, they were designed and built just like this. First floor was your businesses, second, third floors, people lived in them. And if you look at the new rage in new developments today, like Crocker Park and Westlake, they're all building what you have downtown now. Everybody wants to go back to that. People enjoy living where they can walk to the restaurants or walk to their shops. They don't have to get in a car. And this here emulates that entire concept. Now, I know in the public meetings, if you put
Sorry.
it back, that's all right. In the public meetings, there was obviously, I think, some discussion or concern about condos or residential units being part of this project. Well, that being said, I'm sure people probably want to see what those condos or residential units are going to look like. Would that be a safe assumption, I would assume? Okay? You're looking at it. I mean, that's it. First floor retail, second, third floor is the residential living. And there's only two buildings, and both buildings would be identical to this, that would offer that. So.
How wide is that football?
That's where I wish David was here. I believe it's. You remember?
You know, I don't know, but I think that will be feathered out as we develop the plans further.
About 20 feet. Thanks. All right, so the keys to success. The revitalization of Port Clinton requires investment in both the existing downtown and the existing waterfront. Washington Properties remains committed to both. Here's where we get into more of the details and specifics. Washington Properties will invest $60 million in the city, including 333,000 square feet of new construction. And it breaks down accordingly. 173,000 square feet of lodge and conference center, 31,600 square feet of first floor retail linking the downtown to the waterfront, and 119 residential units to support and encourage downtown living. Port Clinton's participation. Washington Properties would ask the city to take the lead in seeking and securing grants for public improvements to the site. These public improvements could include, but are not limited to, the following: the boardwalk, marina, amphitheater, walking paths, playground and picnic area, streets and utilities, and the enhancement of Derby Pond. The immediate impact for the city: $60 million of private investment over 5 years, $6 million worth of public improvements over the same 5-year period, and that equates to a 10-to-1 ratio of private to public investment. The project will create 500 jobs during the 5-year construction period and 585 full-time jobs upon completion. The project will create an influx of investment and renovations to the existing downtown, spurring new business startups and increased property values. And I think you're already starting to see that happen in the downtown, just as rumors surface about a potential project coming to town. And that's just rumors out there. People are hearing that things may be happening, and I think you're already starting to see people invest in buildings downtown, new businesses opening up. So imagine once a true plan is unveiled, the ripple effect is going to have on your community. The economic impact analysis has been prepared by an independent party showing the direct and indirect impact this investment will have not only on the city but the county and the state as well. The results of the study are impressive and will be shared and explained by the group who prepared it. And I believe, Mayor, that is scheduled?
It's scheduled at the next council meeting on the 11th.
Okay, so
This
all
coming Tuesday.
of that information will be shared to council at your 11th meeting. So summary, Washington Properties has listened to the comments and concerns of people in the community and has made adjustments to accommodate the desires of the community as a whole. There will be an enhanced Waterworks Park with 100% public access to the entire site, including the waterfront. Washington Properties has completed and submitted its plan for investment and redevelopment in the city of Port Clinton. The OCIC has provided an economic impact analysis prepared by an independent party. No further action can occur until City Council approves the plan that has been submitted and authorizes the negotiations between the city and Washington Properties to commence. Washington Properties is prepared to move forward once City Council completes these actions. So the next step is for City Council approval of Washington Properties plan and negotiations commence between the city and Washington Properties. The goal would be to begin construction spring 2015. And with that, we will entertain questions from council.
Mr. Trick, would you start with the downtown or the park or both at the same time?
Mike, Mr. Rose, if you wouldn't mind jumping in.
I see it happening at the same time.
2015, springtime, hopefully.
Correct. Correct.
My second question deals with the lodge. Is that private membership or is that open to anyone who can pay for the price of the room?
Be open to anyone. Mr. Rose?
Just a couple of questions. You interested in purchasing buildings downtown yourself?
Yes.
How many, do you have any idea yet?
I do not know the answer to that. We will be bringing some people down in the next couple of weeks, depending on next Tuesday's meeting. We have identified a couple of buildings we're interested in. What has occurred in other communities that we've gotten involved in, is once you do one building, you want to do other buildings because it just enhances everyone's value, and we don't want to see any of them sitting not finished.
Maybe, you might not be able to answer this question. Let's talk about 585 future full-time jobs. And maybe this isn't a fair question. What kind of pay scale have you thought of?
I think that's all going to come out Tuesday. The
Okay.
group that
That'll
prepared
be part of that
the study, very thorough and complex process that they go through to do this. And they'll be able to answer all those questions. They came up with the numbers. So I think I'd allow them.
Just one more question. On the photo of the lodge, there up on the left, it almost shows like maybe a beach, right there.
Right here?
Right there, yeah. Is there any plans on doing anything with that, or is that more the Corps of
I
Engineers?
said if I can answer, you know, I gave you
Right.
the proposal from the Army Corps of Engineer.
Right.
That's part of that project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a $2 million project for the Army Corps of Engineer. It's on its last phases of trying to get approval.
One thing I forgot to show in that rendering is that pointer. Oh.
Where do you want to go?
I can walk over. Basically, yeah. It's hard to show, it probably shows up better on that rendering, but this is one of the viewing platforms. It's like a stamped concrete with a nautical compass in it. As you can see, I mean, there's fishing lines in there. It's a big public space for people to just go out, again, public space to gather. And then it's also the transition into the existing break wall or whatever, or jetties that people fish off of as well. But again, it's a big grand viewing patio right there as you transition out to the jetty.
Is there anything else?
Looking at that rendering or any of them, are those boat slips on the right-hand side? I can't really tell for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
do you know how many boat slips are there? Yes.
David Krebs, he's the architect who put all this together. I don't know what that number is offhand, but he does have a number. I can't remember exactly what that is.
And he will be here Tuesday. He was not able to make today's meeting. He will be at Tuesday's meeting.
And actually, it may show up possibly on that site plan, a number. It does show up on it?
It's a large dock, it's for 70 docks.
70
along
docks.
the riverfront.
Yeah. 70.
Thank you. All right, no more questions, sir.
Mrs. DeFreitas, any at the moment? I'm going to come back to you. Mr. Trilling, you finished? Yeah, come back. Mr. Beal?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have just 4 questions to start. Maybe I'll have more later. Craig, when you spoke about the lodge, there was a de-emphasis of the fishing component that was at the last public meeting. Could you speak to that? Is that still a goal of the project?
Yeah, that is still a very important part of it. Again, nothing's changed as far as the original concept goes, where there will be a fleet of charters, boats right out in front there. And I think the initial conversation, might be correct me if I'm wrong, was to actually reach out to some of our local charter captains that are here in the area to see if any of them would be interested in operating those boats. But to answer your question, nothing has changed from that. It would be a different clientele. It'd be more like, a lot of corporations have golf outings or things like that. This may be where a group of corporate guys come up instead of a sales, or maybe they have a combination of sales meeting, fishing outing, something like that, where it's more, I guess, pampered crew or something like that. But to answer your question, that is still a component.
Thanks. The parking that's shown adjacent to the lodge out at the point, do you see that as being a mix of reserved spots and open spots for the public? So for residents, visitors, and then guests of the lodge?
Yeah, that particular parking lot to the right of the lodge, I believe is all public, because there's plenty of parking internally there to accommodate the lodge. So I would say that would be a public parking.
Okay, so the rest, where it's like a symmetric 2 and 2, you see that as being reserved for lodge guests?
I don't think we're going to lock it in, but again, I think we'll need to wait till Tuesday when David's here. Answer that a little bit further.
Okay. My third question, you identified 3 buildings in the renderings. Are those specific targets for Washington properties to acquire as much as you can reveal here?
I'm not sure.
You had the 3 existing buildings in downtown,
Yes.
one in the corner of the Booth building and the First Burger building.
Okay.
Are those 3 that you've identified for potential acquisition as part of this first phase?
Those are ones we've identified as being a great deal of potential. Or anything else that becomes available sometimes. Owners maybe aren't as willing to negotiate, want to sell it, they have other ideas. So we're not locked into those, but we've identified those as pretty strong candidates.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last question is about and long-term benefits and risks for the city. So, Craig, you spoke about the artery, the economic development artery along the river. So, at the end of the 5 years, should we go forward, is there capacity at Washington Properties to pursue a phase 2, further completing the physical connection from this project that you described here and the Main Street or Madison Street corridor? Is that something that could be in play after the initial 5 years.
That's been our experience in the other communities. That's exactly what's happening. It just keeps spreading out. We run out of buildings.
If I could piggyback on that with a comment, please. I had selected a revitalization committee to work on that, which really involves Main Street, majority of, to work on Madison Street, and we are about this close prepared to present that to you as well. The total reconstruction of the streets, the sidewalks, all the streetscapes. So all these things are going on. We're trying not to give you too much because it's hard to digest, but it's coming probably within the next week or two. And I must say, if I could, Main Street has worked extremely diligent on this project, and to also, I'm going to just go ahead and put Laura on the spot. Laura Schlock, the director of Main Street, has worked really hard. There's some new businesses coming in due to her efforts, and I just publicly I'd like to thank you. She worked very hard, single-handedly, to bring it in. There's a lot of energy going on that is already in motion. We've been working as administration for a couple of years on a vision on downtown, which was something that I ran on. It's extremely important. As you know, Second Street's already in, that's a project that's going to happen at the end of this fall, going into next year. Madison Street right now, we're hoping that we're going to pull it off to 2016. All these things are going on at once. The impact is going to be incredible. So just to kind of piggyback on some of those questions, there's a lot of excitement going on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mrs. Sardi, any questions this evening?
Not,
Thank you. Mr. Ackerman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I do have one question that's raised some concerns for me. Perhaps it's going to be answered on Tuesday when the economic impact study is available. You had stated that the city will be in line for providing $6 million of public improvement over 5 years for the boardwalk, marina, amphitheater, walking paths, playground and picnic areas, streets and utilities, enhancement of Derby Pond, and are not limited to these. That seems like a tremendous amount of activity for $6 million over 5 years. I guess my question is, if the city is unable to secure grants for these or find the funding for these, how much of an effect will that have on your end of the project? Is this I guess, a deal breaker if we can't manage to secure $6 million of funds in 5 years?
Well, I think that will come out in Tuesday's meeting. That will address those things.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ackerman, are you finished with your question?
Oh, please, thank you.
I have one that kind of piggybacks on that one. Is that same process of partnership between the city and the developer, what you did in Worcester and Orville and Medina?
Yes, specifically in Worcester, our most recent project was a public-private partnership. There were a number of ways that we were able to accomplish the objectives. We'll talk about those on Tuesday, but there's lots of opportunities.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Did you have any other questions?
That would be it until I hear any more information on Tuesday. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. One other question. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about using the analogy of the mall and having the anchors. I think we all recognize that. We've all been to the mall. Is that, again, the same model that you used in Worcester and Orville to get the ball rolling? I know the department store, that facility was a new construction, kind of an anchor.
Absolutely. Getting back to when we were talking about expanding, by having the two areas, then you kind of just fill in the middle. And we're in the process of doing that in Orville, and we're continuing to do that in Worcester. The plan in Worcester is to tie into the college and bring the areas together with the same way. It's not our idea. I mean, this is a proven method in communities. It's just implemented.
And I presume since you have final drawings and they're relatively final drawings and numbers, you're able to say XYZ number of hotel rooms and XYZ number of residential and XYZ square footage, that for lack of a better term, I can't remember, the environmental study, the most recent one that was done that, what's it called?
The geotech.
Geotech, thank you. We've not seen that, but I wouldn't understand it if it came through. Your guys have looked at it, and you're comfortable, and they're comfortable with what they need to do.
It appears to be really not in the house.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I have one more question.
Certainly.
The green space, how will we be gaining more? I don't know. I'm not really sure.
How does what's developed compared to the
Yeah,
existing
compared to
footprint?
what's there now, how will the green space
I
be?
think the structures only take up 15% of the space, and I think by all the enhancements that we're talking about, it become a much more usable space for members of the community. And I want to assure the community that we want people to come there. We don't want to block it off. We don't want to gate it off. The only way it's going to work is if we get people to come down there. We look at the Proctor Park and Legacy Village. They encourage people to come down there. We don't want to block anybody out. That's why we wanted to create as much public area as we could and be involved in the maintenance of it, because that's the next thing that's important. Have a park there, but I think we can make a much more comfortable and inviting place for people wanting to attend. Why do people go to Disney World? Because it's clean, it's maintained. There's a lot of other parks that they don't, because they're not as the same condition. So anyways.
Mr. Hatfield, did Mrs. Hartlock present you with any questions?
She did all the first vote minutes.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Council members, any additional questions, comments? Mr. Rose, Mr. Trick, I thank you very much for coming this evening. Thank you. With that, and before we adjourn, just a reminder to set your clocks ahead this Saturday night, Sunday morning. It is spring ahead, even though there's snow. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Offer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that this august body adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Trolley. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. See you Tuesday night.